Hey, folks, good morning. We're reporting from Cabrera, the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape. This is Chris for Chris Wyatt Reports. My guest this morning is none other than the leader of the United Democratic Movement. That's Major General retired Bantu Holomisa. Sir, how are you this morning?
I'm fine, and I hope that you are assisting in that province to deal with the tornado which hit the area there.
Well, I'm not here to help with that, but ironically, I will be going out with the local ward councilor today and fixing potholes in the city. So I've been recalled to active duty. I'll be out fixing potholes like an army soldier today. But yeah, no, the tornado is pretty horrific, and the weather has been horrible. But for some reason, I have good fortune in South Africa. It seems wherever I go, the weather improves. And just before I came here, it was beautiful. The weather is fantastic now, and I'm headed to KZN after this, and hopefully the weather's good there. But you were on television a couple of nights ago talking about the situation where the African National Congress now finds itself in a position that it must either lead as a minority government, call for a government of national unity, or reach some sort of coalition. And there seems to be a lot of discord within the National Executive Committee of the ANC about which direction to go. So Ramaphosa came out, the president, and said, we're looking for government of national unity. Now, your party is one of the smaller parties in parliament, and you and several of the smaller parties are, I believe, making the point that the ANC needs to not ignore or neglect those parties because you represent people as well. Is that a fair statement?
Well, it's a nice, brief opening statement, however, with some correction. After the results were announced, it became clear that there was no outright winner as predicted. And we expected that the ANC with more numbers would call those parties with big numbers to form a coalition. Yes, they did that, but it would appear that they disagreed. And then they came up again to say now they want to form a government of national unity. A government of national unity implied that we should know about the new rules and regulations. So we met as small parties, about 6 of us, and we said, who are we going to address this problem? Who can clarify this for us? Because the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, was not speaking or announcing this proposal as a head of government, but he was doing so as a head of the ANC. Therefore, we cannot, because they seem to have planned that or planned this concept of government of national unity. Therefore, we should be brought in, and we opted, given that we do not have a speaker today, but the Chief Justice is the person who is managing the process until a new speaker is elected and a new president. Then we felt that let us approach his office with a view to call a meeting of all political parties who are represented in parliament, so that the ANC can table this proposal of government of national unity and tell us how will it work, what is going to be the situation in the House, in Parliament. If, for instance, the second party, which has more seats, is part of that government of national unity, who will be the official opposition? How is the accountability going to be done? So we just needed those rules. But otherwise, we were not clamoring for positions and but we felt that let us advise how to address this impasse.
You make an interesting point there that we should note for viewers, and that's something that's often lost on folks, is that oftentimes the African National Congress blurs the lines between the political party and the government of South Africa. Frequently, they give voters the impression that for instance, social welfare grants will be stopped if the African National Congress is no longer ruling. But in fact, members of parliament from all parties get an opportunity to vote on these things and do vote on that. And then often we see the conflation of the office of the president with the president of the republic, the ANC president. And this is happening again. I think some South Africans and foreign observers are confused by that. I mean, it's a common occurrence. The ANC's been doing it for such a long time. In fact, I remember for myself, General, when Thabo Mbeki was pushed aside in Polokwane, And I said, okay, well, he's no longer the president of the ANC. But then the expectation was he should resign as president of the Republic. To me, that kind of scratched my head. Which is more important, president of the African National Congress or president of the Republic of South Africa? In my mind, it should be for the citizens in the Republic. But that conflation does occur quite a bit, doesn't it?
Yes, it has caused a lot of confusion in the past. Even when Mbeki was recalled by the ANC, although Mbeki was elected by parliament, members of parliament, unanimously, we were never informed or that we are going to call Mbeki back. They just told him to resign. But on this one, the challenge here is that the voters of South Africa, 60% of them said, we are not happy with the current status quo. Go out there and figure out how you are going to run this country. That's precisely why the ANC realized that their 40%, they cannot dictate to everyone, but they must consult other parties. Hence, we were calling for this big meeting of party leaders who are represented in Parliament.
Well, it's an interesting point that you make, and one I'll take a step further and get your comments. When people talk about the elections, we're talking about only 58% turnout, 16 plus million out of 27 million registered voters. But that's not the eligible voters. About 40 million eligible people can vote in South Africa, and only 16.5 million. And when you look at the total population of South Africa, about 63 million. Now, I understand that children, of course, can't vote, but nonetheless, that means that only about 1 in 10 South Africans actually went to the polls and made their mark for the ANC in this election. And they've dropped 4 million votes from the last time, a really precipitous fall from 57 to 40%. What do you attribute that fall to? It is, for me, I think it's a combination of service delivery failure, the lack of transparency, a lot of different things. But why did so many people abandon the ANC by simply not voting or not voting for them? A lot of people say it's MK, but that doesn't hold water. MK didn't take all the ANC votes. A lot of people say that. What are your thoughts, General?
Well, the message was clear, is that South Africans are tired of one-party dominance. And they say the one-party dominance they have been watching or witnessing has bred corruption instead of bringing better or improving their quality of life. So it's a lot of combination. Of course, the crime is another area which has shown its ugly head in the last 5 or 6 years. So we welcome the decision of the voters, but we must now start being matured as leaders and get together and say, forget about wasting another 2 billion to go into re-elections. Let us sit around the table and find out within the next 5 days, how are we going to get out of this quagmire? That's the message.
Well, that's a good message. You know, when South Africa first had its first genuine, true democratic vote in 1994, of course, you were a much younger man, as was I back in those days, and you remember that. But there was a government of the national unity that formed after that, and there are some political actors running around making all kinds of fairy tale lies about what came out of that. But if we look back on that time, there was a genuine effort by Madiba at reconciliation to bring South Africans together. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission came out. We can argue whether it was effective or not, but it was an honest effort to try to address the wrongs of the past on all sides. And then beyond that, there was economic growth initially, and there was a concerted effort by the ruling government of national unity to work towards building RDP housing and extending electric grid and water and things like that. But we have some Monday morning quarterbacks, as we call them in America, people after the fact, making comments now disparaging that government of national unity. I'm not saying it was good or bad, but I am saying that there are achievements that were there and people did work together. And the argument they're making now is that this is just an extension of apartheid. I would disagree with that. I would argue that the government of national unity made a good start to South Africa, and things went a little bit south as we got in the new millennium. Do you think that's a fair assessment of that original government of national unity, or have I missed the mark?
No, you didn't miss a mark. Other than that, let me add something. The reason why that government of national unity worked well at the time is because it was preceded by the talks between the ANC and National Party and other parties which led to us to agree on an interim constitution and agree on a date of the election. The ANC won those elections, but still Mr. Mandela felt that notwithstanding the fact that they've got more numbers, but they should involve other parties as part of uniting South Africa and reconciling one another, each other. This time around it's different. The ANC has lost control and it has got less numbers as compared to 1994. But be that as it may, there are still concepts or other rules and regulations which we can take from that and see whether they fit in under the current environment. So we cannot completely compare the government of national unity of 94 and now, because some of the leaders who are leading parties today in South Africa were not part of the negotiations, and they were not even interested in the GNU, but ANC and National Party of old, and the Freedom Front, not Freedom Front, but Inkatha Freedom Party, led by Nkosi Muthelezi, agreed to say, let's move forward.
Well, this election certainly is a sea change. It's seismic. We can use all kinds of adjectives to describe what happened in this election in South Africa. From my perspective, and I like your view on this, my perspective, I think it's a very healthy sign for South Africa that one-party dominance for the moment, at least, is over, and parties will be forced to work together in the interest of South Africans. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is a chance for a brighter day for South Africa, and maybe we turn the corner on the direction South Africa's been headed for the past decade?
In my presentation or my speech during the launch of our manifesto on 3rd March, I did say or warn even at that stage that there is an emerging consensus to the effect that there might be no outright winner in the forthcoming elections of 29 May. I said this in March, and I said that would be good because it would force the South Africans to go and sit around the table and plan the future for the next 5 years. In doing so, I suggested that there should be an establishment, or we should form a national dialogue. A national dialogue which would not only sit for a long weekend or 2 days, but it should be a national dialogue which will continue at least for a period of 24 months. The aim being to identify and correct the mistakes we have done in the last journey, from the last 30-year journey. And I think the government of national unity, if it takes off, we should immediately gather and sit around the table with civil society, with religious and traditional leaders, as well, of course, the politicians, and say, who over South Africa in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, one thing that's a constant in South African politics, and I think that's probably a good thing for South Africans, is that you are a voice of reason and someone that can reach across the aisle on both sides and mediate and bring people together. Forgive me, but calling you a graybeard, I have the graybeard, but you are a graybeard in that sense. Let me give you a chance here, General. Any last comments or thoughts about the future going forward, where we'll be in the next few months? And I don't want you to be, Nostradamus or Senior van Rensburg, but maybe you can make a prediction or just share some wise words with folks about where South Africa is and where we're headed. I'll give you the floor, a chance to wrap up.
Thank you for the compliment and confidence that I can bring everybody together. It's very rare that is referred to a former dictator. You know, Mandela used to call me Bantu Holomisa. I decided to travel with him all over the world because he's a dictator. So I'm scared that if I'm out of the country, he can coup me. So on a serious note, I think people mustn't panic or press panic buttons. One thing which South Africans has, I like about is that when we are in a tight corner, we are able to come up with better solutions. My prayer is that whoever, whether Chief Justice can agree to appoint a team, not necessarily him chairing this session, a team perhaps including some leaders of the civil society and religious leaders, just to say, guys, come, ANC, you're given an opportunity to present this. And then out of that, those who want to continue with GNU can continue. And those who are not interested, they can play a role of being to promote accountability. So I'm definitely sure that within 3 days, we will know where we are heading to.
Well, General Bantu Holomisa, leader of the United Democratic Movement, a member of parliament, and someone very much interested in what's coming out of the Government of National Unity, a coalition, and getting all parties together. Thank you for your time, sir. Listen, it's a beautiful day here in the Eastern Cape. I need to go put on the proper clothes so I can fill some potholes. So thank you for your time, as always. Pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.